Hello and welcome to my channel. Yesterday I received this Creality Ender 3D printer from the good folks at GearBest.com. So today I'm going to try to do a little unboxing video, show some of the assembly, and hopefully by the end of this video I will be showing you the first print that I got off of this thing. So without any further delay, let's get started. Okay, first off, the box arrived in good shape. I don't see any damage at all to it. Got somebody's big footprint right there, but doesn't look like it hurt anything. Okay, these things come packed extremely well. They have lots of this black. This looks like almost like the Kaizen foam stuff. It's all nice, nice little compartments in here. Here's the instructions right on top. We'll set those aside and get back to those in a minute. This is some sample filament, looks like, with the end stop, and that may be some extra parts. It's got the little SD card, USB to SD card adapter in there, the nozzle cleaner, all kinds of good little stuff in there. Here is the package of tools. They're really good about putting the different little tools, the wrenches and Allen wrenches and screwdrivers and things you need to assemble this. Got some wire ties, and it looks like all the little packages of the hardware, looks like they're individually packaged and labeled, so that's good. So let's see what we got here. This is some of the extrusions. Let's see if I can get this out. Oh, I may have some more stuff here. Some more of the extrusions. Power cord for the US, which is good. Here is the, looks like the Z stepper with the coupler already attached on it. This is the head or the hot end assembly. A little carriage. So let's see if I can. Okay, I'm just going to let that like so. Set this over here. This little model is much different than the CR10 that I put together a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, CR10 is pretty much, comes ready to assemble. It's basically about 90% assembled, so it's really easy to kind of throw it together. So here's the extruder and this would be the X assembly, I guess. So set that down. This is the control board. This is unlike having a big box like the CR10, this has if I can get it out of here, has a little board mounted here, and the rest of the hardware is, or the electronics I should say, is mounted in this little box that's already attached here. So this is just the control panel, and it screws over here on the right hand side. Kind of a neat little thing. And I've already used my CR10 to print out a little cover that goes over this, so I'm already prepared for that. So I think we're getting just about to the end of it here. This is part of the mount for the spool. A few other things here hidden in these pockets. I can get them out. this is what I was talking about. There's a lot of foam and stuff in here. I don't even know how they get in there. Okay, there we go. So this looks like the 3 rollers that adjust the Z-axis for the X-axis kind of cantilevered across. I believe that's what that is. And I think we've got everything out of here. So let me get this box out of the way. All right. Now, another scraper tool or tool used to get the parts off the bed. So let me pull up a chair and we'll get started assembling this thing. Screw for the Z-axis. Okay. These are the 2 sides that get mounted right here, and you have to be a little bit careful to make sure you put the right one on the right side, and the holes, they have different holes in here that are oriented a little bit differently, so you have to make sure you're paying attention with that. So with that said, let me open up the instructions here. I do want to mention one thing too. If you're in the U.S. or a country where your power is 110, like mine is here, it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and, because every one of these I've ever seen is always set to 230, so you want to go ahead and, before you forget, take something and stick in there and slide that little switch over till it says 110. Well, actually it says 115, but that's what we use here in the U.S. So this has kind of got some sticky stuff on here. I'm not sure what that is, but it'll come right off when not sure what that is. Alright. Alright, let's take a look and see what step 1 is. Okay, I got everything assembled. I apologize, the camera kept shutting off, and part of the time I didn't even notice that it was off, so just kept right on working and didn't realize that it wasn't being recorded. But I went ahead and got all this together. I want to go over a few things, maybe that, you know, something you might want to look out for. I mentioned earlier about making sure you switch the power supply to the correct voltage. They do a pretty good job in here. It's mentioned here, right, you know, if you're one that reads the directions. It's mentioned here right at the beginning of the instructions for assembly, and then it's also mentioned again right here in step 2, which is in that step you're fastening the power supply to that beam there. So it says select the correct input voltage to match your local mains, 220 or 110 volts. So they do give you plenty of mention, but you know, to me, when you unbox one of these, as soon as you pull that out, you should look to see what the voltage is set at and set it for whatever you have in your area. That way you can't mess up. A couple of things I wanted to talk about, and I've seen some other videos. I've watched other videos of folks putting these things together, and there seems to be a little bit of an issue with when you're putting this top rail on here. You know, if you put it in this side, these holes don't quite line up, and you've got to kind of pull it apart. I found that I really think the holes probably will line up without, you know, I've seen some guys say they get a drill and drill them out and all that. I don't think that's necessary. I think you have to go back, and some of these other things that you tightened up snug during the assembly, during these steps, you need to go back and loosen up. Like, I found that I couldn't pull this out. I mean, I probably could have if I really forced it to get those two holes to line up, but once I loosened up this bracket, that gave me some play in that bracket, and then I was easily able to get those two screws in and then come back and just snug that back up. And it was, you know, like I said, there's a little bit of tolerance in these through holes, so when you put the screw in, if you have it shifted to one side or the other, why then it may, you know, and sometimes it may be just a few thous the difference of getting that screw in and not getting it in. So make sure you watch for that. Like I said, just take your time, pull back and loosen up some other things. But of course, once you do that, don't forget to go back and snug them back up. So another thing I found an issue with, and let me just turn this thing around here. I got it plugged up here. Let's see if I can pull this around. I'll just pull this power cord out for now. Another thing I noticed is, and I'm going to show a picture right over here, right over here somewhere. This bracket, and it appears to be a little aluminum bracket that holds this stepper motor on, it was bent. And I don't know how it got bent, because like the package didn't look like it had any damage to it. There was kind of an impression of somebody's big footprint on it, where somebody stepped on it. But I don't think it's going to hurt anything. What I did do is I took this bracket here, the tensioning bracket on the front, took it loose, slipped the belt off, took these two bolts off, and then I had 4 screws to remove the stepper motor from the bracket that holds it on. And I have a vise outside on a workbench, so I was able to go back out there and try to straighten it. It's, you know, like anything, once it's bent initially, you can never get it exactly straight and flat again. But I got it pretty good, I think. I'll show a before and after picture right here, and you can judge for yourself how well I did straightening that. Other than that, everything was, the instructions were, I'll say, very adequate. There's, you know, I didn't have any problem really figuring out anything. Some of these pictures, because I'm old and can't see good, I had to look twice to get the orientation right and everything. But no real big deal about getting anything fastened on there. I do like that Creality does give you a few extra things, like on some of these little bolts and nuts. They're really good, at least so far, what I've got from them so far, about putting in some extra, particularly the little small pieces, which is awesome, because if you're working and you drop one and it rolls up under there and you've lost it and they've only given you just the right amount, that's not too cool. So kudos to them for throwing in some extra. However, I will say, when I got my CR10 from them, and I know I'm cutting my head off on this a little bit, but when I got my CR10 from them, I got a spool this size. It's a smaller spool, but it was full. Now I have since ran all that filament, but this little bit of filament is all that was in that bag. And when I took it off and tried to put it on here, of course, not being on a spool, it goes everywhere. So I did put it on this spool here, so we're going to try to use that. I don't even know if that's enough filament to run the test program that's on the little SD card. We're going to fire it up here in a little bit. See, I've already turned it on one time, leveled the bed. It was tightened down all the way, which I guess is how they like to ship them. But the bed's nice and level. This beam's nice and straight. Everything's homing fine. No snagging or anything, binding on anything. So I think it'll go. So let me turn this thing around, back around here, and you might notice too, I took some of the foam material that was the packing material, and I actually cut a piece of it off to put up underneath this. So I don't know what kind of vibrations it'd have on this old rickety table here. So we'll fire it up and see what happens. Okay, I've got what little bit of filament they sent loaded up here and got it pushed through, so we got a little bit oozing out there. I'm going to go ahead and select that test program and see if we can at least get a couple of layers here. I did notice as I was loading that dog program that there seems to be some troubleshooting and installation files on that little micro SD card as well. So I haven't even looked at those. I just put it on here like this. So okay, so here's the little dog that sample G-code file that I ran. You can see that the white filament that they supplied with the printer really only did maybe a third of it, probably not even a third, but I threw on some black just so I could finish it up. I was kind of surprised that they had such a long program on there as a sample. The way it was programmed, it took 5.5 hours on this machine. But it ran well. So far I'm pretty happy with it. This is not going to be really a review video. I'll probably do another video in a week or two after I've got a bunch of hours on this machine. But I have to say I'm very optimistic. It's a pretty sweet little machine. I'm liking it a bunch so far. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up down below. It helps me out on my channel and I really appreciate it. Also, I'll have some links in the description where you can go check out some of these Creality printers from GearBest. And you know, if you use those links to do your shopping at gearbest.com, not only will you get a great deal from them, it also helps my channel out a little bit. So it doesn't cost you any more, but it does throw a little my way, which I appreciate very much. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.